Hey, Jace.
Hi, Allison.
I'm,
How are you?
I'm okay. I'm out just on the last 3 minutes of walking, and the wind's a little bit strong. So,
No
ah,
problem. I'm gonna go get my tea. I forgot that I had it on there, so I'm gonna go grab that.
go.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
How are you today?
I'm better. Definitely better than what I have been for the last, I think, about 10 days now.
Really?
Yeah, so that's a huge relief.
Anything you point it to, or say it, or seen?
Well, I know that it's so the physical of it is the drug interaction.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that I don't seem to really be able to shift, I wouldn't say I can't shift it at all, but it takes a lot of time to shift it, and that's the depression that comes along often. Not always, but more than 50% of the time, I think. And I'm beginning to understand the biochemistry of that more, which really does help for me. Because when I can understand the process of something, then I don't, then my critical voice doesn't come out. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what
Different
I'm
perspectives.
realizing, yeah, and so with that, what I'm realizing is how at certain levels of functioning, how what's the word that one uses, how unrelenting that critical voice can be. That's the word I would use. Like I always have to come back to that, and yeah, it's like it never goes away completely, and of course then you'd say, then you realize, well, if it doesn't go away completely and you know that it's going to be there, like, just ignore it. I mean, it's there, so don't pay too much attention to it. Don't give it more fuel. So I've been struggling with, kind of thing. But I woke up this morning without a migraine. I slept 12 hours again, but at least I didn't have the migraine. And the allergic reaction is gone, and I can feel that the liver is beginning to recover again. So that helps a lot. Because what I'm noticing is, I mean, I've known this always theoretically, but that the liver dysfunction together with what, has gone on in the lining of the gut contribute a lot to that experience of just being immobilized. You can't really do much.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I feel anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's where I've been.
Mm.
And what I noticed yesterday was when we were talking in yesterday's session, like I was going on and on about, my experience of the difference between sympathy, empathy, and compassion. And you came with one line and you cut through all of that. And I just thought, fuck, how the hell do you manage to do that? And I sit in this quagmire. And it was reflected for me in a session then that I had later that evening. And I could tell that I could see how my physical depletion matched what I was able to give out emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a client that I've had for a while, and there's huge trust, that has developed. So I know the session was still meaningful for her. She got a lot out of it. But for me, more than half the time, my responses weren't landing with her in the moment of where she was. And I thought, well, at least I could really see that very clearly. It's not like I haven't ever had that experience before.
Mm-hmm.
It was just more defined for me, I think, exactly because of how my pattern had played out in the yes and session. So that was useful.
Mm.
It was good. Yeah. So there's lots.
Well,
There's a lot.
yeah, and I thank you for that, because I'll also like put in here. It's like without all of that, like whatever you're reflecting into, is like without all of that, then there really couldn't be a place to test. And again, like test out, is that a good shortcut?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's just it's like a practice, but it's not like my practices are the best.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
No. And, I mean, I do recognize that. It's,
I know you do.
yeah. Uh, yeah.
That's working together.
Yes. So that's okay. So that and so that is to some extent, I mean, or no, to a large extent for me, that is collaboration, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was thinking about what would I want to bring to today to guiding a guide, then it would be what goes into that point of collaboration, and not necessarily between oneself and somebody else, although that's a large part of it, but it's also what like what goes into that collaboration that happens internally, or how, like, yeah, I didn't know how it was a question. How do you recognize it? I guess why am I asking the question? I ask the question because how do I manage to repeat it? because if I can remember to recognize it, or when I recognize it, if I can remember how to get out of that unconscious quagmire, because I can see it as an entanglement. That's what it feels like to me. But then how do you, I mean, I go back to that thing about how do you remember all of you and what you are? So it's those points of where, the other day when in the morning group when we were talking about power, and I made the comment that people will fight against power, against domination, not necessarily because they want domination, but just because they want the freedom, right? Mm-hmm. And so then for me, when I'm in that entanglement often comes from what I'm expecting of myself. Here it is. What I'm expecting of myself on a third dimensional plane that I can't seem to get to. And then how do I remember? I'm becoming so emotional now. Sorry. It's about being able to trust that what you get to when you do sink in will be more than enough. So in my language, then it's trusting all of me and what I'm being gifted and what I am, what I'm made up of, and what's happening now. So what I'm recognizing is, and I think that's why I'm so emotional, is the expansion that there really is. That it's not as constricted as what I have been experiencing over the last 10 days. But in that time, it has been, to correct myself, in the past, it has been enormously difficult. So then I look for a shortcut. How do I get out of it? But I kind of feel like I know what the next obvious action is.
Oh, good.
I had a question now and it's gone.
It's like leads into, what if we don't like that next action?
Yes. Yes. And I think what I'm also realizing is how many limiting beliefs there are.
Yeah, a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't just drop them one time.
No, we don't drop them all in one time, certainly not. But we can chip away at them, which is good. It's so interesting. But for me, it's just like I realize that part of that critical voice is feeling responsible for my illness. And there's no logic to that. But I do feel the weight of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it feels like I haven't been able to do a good enough job of what I was given. So that's something to work on. And I guess in the end, it's, so much of whatever we manage to overcome starts with what we can be aware of in terms of what we can't do.
Mm-hmm. So what would you like to remember in all that you are?
I'd like to remember that I'm a small part of something that is huge, and it doesn't stay small. The more you it stays small so that you can manage it, or it is small to start off so that you can manage it. It's almost like you have to zoom in to be able to then zoom out. So you go into the details. So I'm a detail of the field. I'm an atom of the field. I'm a stain of grand on the beach. But I can become the beach. I can have the experience of being the beach. I can have the experience of being the field. That's the potential. And in that, so what is it about that experience that I appreciate? And that's about being love. Just being able to work in that and with that and facilitate that for people. If they can get back.
Is that small?
No, it's not. But at the same time, I think the reason for this, for me to go to the small is that you don't have to try and be big. You just stay within what you can manage. And when you really go deep into that, the expansion happens. So the initial ignition is small.
Mhm.
It's like when, I can remember when I started dealing with addiction clients, and I felt overwhelmed by it because I had my own issues with food, and I'd gotten through it, but I didn't really know how I'd gotten through it. And I remember my supervisor saying to me, you just deal with one little part of the habit. It's just a habit. So you deal with that first, and you help your clients to bring awareness to it first, and then to each tiny step in that habit. And it worked. It worked. I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed. I mean, there were lots of other stuff that I did too. I worked with a homeopath. Those were big. They seemed so insurmountable. And it's just interesting. I think also what I was also thinking about is how many times you go through the same cycle. Eh?
Hmm. When is it the same cycle?
And probably never, but the bones of it are the same.
Hmm.
So the depth of it is different each time, right?
Well, I think only when there's awareness is it different.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah.
If it
Yeah.
isn't aware, then it's avoiding it.
Yeah.
And it's the same one that likely will fester.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. It certainly does. And that's the irony of it is all you have to, what you need to do is so simple.
Okay. What's simple?
Bring the awareness.
Awareness to what?
To the doing and the experiencing.
And why is that silly?
Because it should be so easy to do, and yet it's so difficult for us to do that.
And so what's easy then?
Follow the breath comes to me.
So why is that silly? Or what's
Because it
silly
seems
about
too,
it? It seems
it
what?
seems,
It seems what? It seems what?
too,
Yeah,
too easy.
there we go. Interesting. Interesting.
And so if I go back to my original thought about what I wanted to bring was, where does the point of collaboration take place? So it would be internally, it would be the meeting place of the parts, the different parts. So the part that wants to keep you safe and the part that wants to expand.
Between the tensions.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you feel the tension, that's the signal for collaboration. Even if it is sitting in it, to stay in it takes collaboration between different parts of you.
So for you, is between the size rather than the size is the depth.
Mm.
The degree.
Mm. So there's obviously then a fear of the depth.
Mm.
And then if there's fear of the depth, then it's a fear of, in my case, it would be a fear of abandonment in the depth. And for other people, it will be different, right? Could be a fear of not belonging, fear of rejection.
Similar, which
Which is
all of
very,
them. Yeah. Yeah. But I got the difference. Yeah. A different word for sure.
yeah.
So then in the fear, what's easy?
To shut down and stay where you are, kind of freeze. Like is it, what animal is it that plays dead? Well, there are quite a few of them. The possum, yeah. There you go.
So easy to play the possum, or it's easy to play, or easy to in the depth. Possum or
You trust. And to your surprise, when you step off the edge of the cliff, you have this unbelievable experience of being embraced.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that I've had both those experiences, and I was, I just still vacillate between them. There's a big thing with me about making a mistake.
Then what happens if that were to happen?
About things going wrong for other people.
Not even about you then.
it must involve myself. Because if it goes wrong for other people, then I feel the impact of it. Right?
And then what does that give you?
Then my critical voice can come out more and say, see, look what you did.
Mm-hmm. And you said that's your way of belonging.
Yeah, say that again.
It's
Sorry.
your way of belonging.
It's my way of belonging. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get that.
No, that's important. That's important, though.
Very.
Awareness is the simple, but that wasn't simple to see.
Mm. Mm.
Otherwise, you'd be abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Which in all reality leads to abandonment. And all truth of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why it's silly.
Where do you see the silly?
To avoid the abandonment was to create the abandonment. And hold on to that as the truth.
Yeah, because you shut down. So then you separate yourself anyway. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Mm.
So it is, we end up creating what we don't want anyway.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Thinking that will be how we avoid it. That's the problem. It's the problem solving with avoiding.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to go deep between the tensions is easy when you're
connected.
Your words were breathe.
Yeah.
Easy to breathe. Yeah. And when you're breathing, what do you, then the next one was, because it's simple to be aware.
Yeah.
And it's silly because that seems too easy.
Yeah.
Oh, what's easy again?
To breathe.
Uh-huh. So when you breathe, then what's simple?
To connect. Because you do. Oh, I mean, I do, you know. That's where that sigh is so telling. Right, when the body sighs.
It's right in that tension, right in the difference between them, right after the question. It's that moment.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from this again is that when I remember to bring my awareness to how much of expansion I have allowed to exist inside of me, then I use that expansion to embrace and hold the tension. So I go back to that thing about where does my identity lie? You know, am I body and mind, or am I beyond that? Am I an electromagnetic field that has manifested a body and has an electromagnetic field inside the body? That's my newest conceptualization. I like to, it makes sense to me. It's logical enough.
Sounds, well, that's what I was working was what has it easy, simple, and silly.
Mm. Mm. Those are good words to work with.
So what do I want? Oh, it's easy. Why can't I have it? It's simple. And silly.
Mm.
Because in all reality, all wobbles are just silly.
Yeah.
Because they take us away from who we are, what we want.
Yes. Yes.
That's structure.
It is.
So our structure is always what do we want, why we can't have it. It's the simplest form of structure, the shortcut of structure. Because if we're having it, there's no tension.
Yeah. Yeah, then we're in flow.
Mm-hmm. Which is the tension we want. So, sorry, the resistance of tension then is the one that why we can't have it, where flowing tension is what we want and in alignment with.
So those periods of time where we don't experience any tension, those are rest or pause.
Well, could I use the word resistance? Could I replace tension with resistance?
But if there's no resistance, then there's flow.
Mm-hmm. Which I think to my point, I think there's always tension. In the moment, there has to be always tension. It just doesn't have to be flowing and it doesn't have to be resistance. It's one or the other.
You're going to have to run this by me again, Jess. Sorry. Let me see if I can. So what you're saying is that being alive is being in tension.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in that tension, you're either in resistance or you're in flow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So when we talk about creative tension, then that's flow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, good one. I've never separated them out like that before.
So then it's problem orientation or problem structure.
Mm. Mm.
Then what is that?
Oh, you're asking what is the problem structure?
Or whatever opposite of creative structure.
For me, creative structure is moving towards what you want. Problem solving structure is spinning your wheels in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
That's the metaphor that I've been using that kind of seems to resonate for people. So your problem solving structure actually is when you don't have enough awareness.
It's limited awareness. Or it's
Yeah.
it's one. It's only this. It's one point of the structure. And what happens is most of us forget about the moment of now is the missing piece of structure. The truth of now is the missing structure in that. The missing piece of structure.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not what it should be, what it could be, what it is, but not what it is. It's everything else, but acknowledging what it is one point of structure.
Yeah. But for me, the truth of now is actually infinite. When you go down deep into what
it isn't. Now, the possibilities, the potentials are infinite, but the truth of now is that we're picking one.
Yes. But then we're not being true to the fullness of now.
Uh-huh. Which then opens the space and opens it to choose another one. So that adds the structure to it. But what I'll say is most of us aren't aware that the truth of it is one point. So we're living like that's unaware of that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then again, and I go back to why identity is so important. What are we?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we really when we can really allow that, that's when we get things moving in the most profound way. And so for me, I was looking for the bridge, you know, like I said, it's taken me 10 days. I didn't feel depressed for 10 days, but I started feeling depressed after 5. And I can know this stuff up in my head, but I couldn't allow the experience of it. So there was something that stopped I'm just going back and trying to reflect now. So if I had to use the languaging that I've used up to now, then it would be that old pattern to freeze and for the critical voice to be dominant had more say, more territory than the other experience, and the other experiences of expansion and of the truth of now. So how do you get those two parts to meet? And I guess that's through practice. The more you strengthen the expansion, the more it can. It's like that's the light, right? So the stronger the light, the further it can eliminate and illuminate the shadow. Those would be my words for it, I think. So I could say to myself at moments, all you have to do is just sit down and meditate, and then I'd start to do it, and I'd just fall asleep. Just so tired.
So rather than playing possum, what would be the opposite of playing possum for you? Like the words, like what words would you say to describe?
Well, the opposite of freezing is fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do both of those very well. But they don't both, then neither of them really help.
Right. They're both one and the same on the problem structure.
Mm.
Because it's not what you want.
Correct. So then the obvious action is surrender in not in giving up, but in allowing.
And what do you say to yourself when you're allowing? When you're flowing?
Part of it is just that it's okay.
What's the other part?
I think the other part would be curious, watch, see what happens. And when you can see what's happening, then you'll take action. That it's okay to wait, in other words. So you I just need to check something just for a minute. Thanks, Jess. Sorry, I just had to check in with Bruce. He just came in.
Perfect. Glad. How's he doing?
He's doing okay. I thought he'd gone for a procedure at the hospital, but it was just for the car. So he's okay.
Good. That's part of the replacing the pattern with something, right? And when we replace the pattern with words that we want to repeat, then that's part of the practice.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. So what I found interesting is that for myself, I become more intentional about what I say to myself before I go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And that seems to have helped a lot. Like you said to me the one time, make sure you're aligned before you go to sleep. And I thought, well, of course I'm aligned. But then I thought, but you don't check in that you are. And I started doing that. So that's pretty automatic for me. And then I've been able to add this other thing as well. And I think I think it's helping. So that's good.
What about the mornings?
When I wake up in the morning, I always wake up with a thing of gratitude that I can walk, because my mum spent the last 4 years of her life, and one of my best friends who had MS. And I've got a friend now that can't walk. So that's what I wake up with when I move my feet. Yeah, so that's a big thing.
Mm-hmm. Those are the two most important points, I think.
Yes. Yeah, they're the bookends. Eh?
Mm-hmm. Well, fun. It's like we worked a structure of uncovering what's easy, simple, and silly for people.
Mm.
What do they want? Why can't they have it? Oh, it's easy, silly, and simple. Easy, simple, silly. Guiding the guides. Easy, simple, and silly.
I'm still adapting so much to, or adjusting, adapting and adjusting. You know, that's what I realized yesterday as well in terms of how I was trained. And I'm not sure what the structure was of. Maybe that will be helpful if I go and sit and think about that. I think with psychotherapy training, there's a lot of emphasis on what you're feeling. And then so when you've got the feeling, it's about facilitating an understanding for people about their feelings, as well as an acceptance. And there's also some exploration in terms of the patterns, definitely, in that understanding, and the origins, which all go back to attachments, history. So I'm not sure why. I guess I'm not exactly not what the difference is, but I think what I've been trying to do is bring the skills that I appreciate from our training and the skills that I appreciate from what I've learned and what I'm still learning with you in terms of that. It's almost like it's It's a meta level to that. So it's what I experience with you when you work with me, and when, when we do sessions with other people, and I watch you working with other people, is a meta level. Yeah, so there's still stuff for me to explore there. Sorry. Because I think there's a time for both, right?
Well, yeah. And they exist within each other too.
Yes, they do. They absolutely do, right? So then it's about meeting the client at where they are at,
Mm-hmm.
and facilitating that dance between the two.
Who else is better to do that than you?
God, yes, I don't know. I don't know. Thanks for that, but I think I'll be far away off from that still. But I'll take it. I'll put it under my pillow.
Right? I mean,
You know what I was thinking about the other day, and this is really, really, really a very small grain at the moment, but because I have never thought of that I want to go back into academics at all. But was doing his doctorate, and there's another part to it also, because it's kind of like protected employment. In Canada, if you're over 65 and you go back, to do your master's or a doctorate, you can do it for free. And if you're doing a doctorate, then you get a position as a professional assistant. So then you help the professors if they manage the students, and it's dog work. It's not nice at all. But I had kind of thought of doing that. That wasn't my first thought. My first thought was that how my first thought was, how much work has there been done in academics on change in individuals? And the reason for that is because psychotherapy is supposed to bring about change, and I think it can, to a large degree, depends. And then and then coaching is so focused on facilitating change. That's its whole trajectory, right? And I guess because of my experience with how much realizing how much awareness around structure, and that comes from the coaching world, that doesn't come from psychotherapy. So that's where my thought started, was, might be interesting to be able to explore that more in terms of bringing that into the systems of mental health. How would one be able to bring that into the systems? Because coaching.
What do you see they are bringing in? I'll share what I see that they're bringing in. But I think it's all, I don't know the industry as a whole.
I don't either anymore. I've never seen it.
The group I'm working with, and it's separate, but they're bringing manifestation
in mental health.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't say mental health. Like I can't say I can go that far. I can say like in recovery, right? The addiction recovery side of it. That's where I'm seeing that.
That's very interesting. That's huge.
And half, but a good starting half.
No, but that's very big. Mm-hmm. Kind of, wow. Because if it starts there, it will, it's got a lot of influence on the rest.
It is. I mean, there's so much in the same.
I mean, we all addicted, don't get me wrong. I don't presume that people that have got chemical substance addictions have it as easy as anybody else. I don't think that at all.
No.
But essentially we are all addicted.
Mm-hmm.
Some way. Wherever we have a lack of awareness, we are addicted. So whatever happens in those fields impacts a lot. Those fields of understanding. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that was a new thought for me, because there's a lot that goes into change in terms, and there's a lot of what I've already covered in my own personal journey that I would bring in, and my personal journey, which includes the direction that I took in my work always. And and this morning I listened to something that was really, really, really interesting in terms of processes and meeting points in the body between the microbiome and the endothelial lining, then the neurotransmitters, and then plant medicine. And how those all can collaborate in a creative structure, I would think, or I would say, even though it's seen as healing, it's more than healing, because it's also regeneration, which was what healing is partly, And so, and I was just thinking about it, and that is change, and that has a direct impact on our experience in our body and our experience in mood, which then impacts mental health, obviously. And then the other thing that I was thinking about in all of this is that you can bring about change on a certain level, but if you don't have enough collaboration between the different aspects and parts of yourself, you block the regeneration. So you can change the biochemistry, and if you haven't facilitated the mental awareness for the person at that same time, they'll land up in the same place.
Yep. And that's the important of the next action. Replace the old programming with a new program, and otherwise the road traveled most will be the strongest.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the not understanding that structure in manifestation is the problem, is why it's only half of it.
That's right. That's right.
And we fuel it, even in our best efforts, we keep fueling it.
Yeah. When we don't have the awareness.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's more about the thinking is the more that they talk about it, letting it out, the better it gets compared to holding it in. Yes. But if you don't replace it with something different, you don't replace it with a new pattern, a new thought process, a new feeling, it's wasted time.
Exactly.
Which means worth less.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess this is the question for me, because up to now my experience has been that you can work with the mental awareness and you can get far with the trajectory of momentum with it. But in my experience, if you don't apply the same then to the physical, you miss out on more than, well, you miss out on a huge chunk of potential. And sometimes then because that process hasn't been applied to the physical, the person lands back, in a way, back to square one. So that's why for, and I guess again that just comes from my own path.
Like meditation then becomes a version of that, is how I hear it. Is that what you mean?
No, it's more about working with the biochemistry of the body as well as working with the psychology of the mind. With the psyche. That you have to do those two things together, and then there's the third thing about working within and from the electromagnetic field, and meditation is a pathway to that. It's not the only one, but it's a very useful one, and it's substantial. And I mean, by that I mean depth meditation. Not that visualization has got no place at all. It has got a huge place. I use it a lot. But there's a difference for me, we use the word meditation too loosely in Western culture. You can do visualization and still stay within the realms of the body and the psyche, and not drop down deep into the field.
Mm-hmm.
So there's three, we come back to the 3 points. Body, mind, and the field, or the old terminology was soul. Yeah, and it's just that I guess just listening to that talk again this morning, it just took me back again to how much opportunity and possibility and potential there is out there, and then how much our social structures also play their part in restricting that potential and opportunity. And they were talking specifically about psychedelics, and in plant form, not in pharmacology. I prefer the plant form by far. I think it's more sustainable to the body. But if it's not going to be there and there's only going to be the pharmaceutical options for people, it's better than nothing. But then it doesn't do what the plant medicine does to the microbiome. That's the difference. It will work on the central nervous system, but it will not facilitate the regeneration and the repopulation of the microbiome in the same way. So it was interesting for me that I started to think about all of that, and I started to think, oh God, me and academics, they're not friends. I don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
But before I'd always thought I would never do a doctorate. But before I came, which was 20 years ago, I had chosen a topic which there was very little research on at that point in time. And my proposal had been accepted, and then I just got too ill. I couldn't bring it from South Africa to here. It was too complex. If I hadn't been that ill, maybe I would have been able to do it. So it was just interesting for me. And then I just thought, well, that's something else for me to think of, which was useful, and remains useful, because I kind of keep on going back to it, and obviously that's why I'm talking about it also.
Mm-hmm. And to remember, it's not the way that we think it is. So if we think of it from a metaphoric standpoint, I hear you trying to put "how can I do it" into framing it, in it, rather than like, oh, what would I love about it? Like, what would be the passion behind it? And then that opens up all the spaces to impact it the way that you're desiring to. Without that structure, it opens up space for the structure, a different structure.
Mm. Mm. I think what I love about it is sorry.
Like those may be the vehicles, the tools, but when they're thought of that, then it opens up the space in which you can how to interact with them.
Mm. It's so funny, you know. And I had thought this too. I thought, so I want to write about change, but I mean, that's life. It's the inevitability of life, and yet we don't really know how to navigate it, or we don't really know what it is, or I don't. Anyway.
Yeah, I think as soon as the idea comes, right, and then as I go, all the ways that we would do it become the limitation. And obviously, surely that was not what you want as the way to do it. So that will be an easy way to talk yourself out of it.
Yeah, but I mean, the limitations are also, and they can also just be the challenge, right?
The fight if we need it, but also it can be the blinding points when we get into it too much too. All the ways to do it is what I heard the limitations were, rather than what would it be that I would want, and finding the passion following that opens up the spaces that, yes, maybe that program facilitates it, but then inside of the facilitation you're creating where you're working, with who you're working, and how you're working, so that it's not that drag, not that, what, I don't forgot the words you used, but it was a hard work, right? Tough work, grunt work. I don't remember the word, but it was like not all situations would be that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the limitation would would be just my that I the form in which I choose to go and explore it would be important. Put it that way. Um, and if I didn't want to go through the drudgery and what I have experienced before with academics, within the academic world, then I just go and write a book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, take a swipe at that.
Interesting. Title for mine that showed up this morning: Happy Butt.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to do that with a double T?
Probably not, but thought about it. Yeah, Could. I don't know. It's like, so there we go. That's ours together then, since it came up at the same time. Think about it. Wouldn't that be a fun book to do together?
I would love to do something like that with you, Jess. I would love it. Yeah.
I wasn't keen. I wasn't keen on the idea of doing it alone. Let's put it that way.
Well, you got me. If and whoever else, like, doesn't have to only be the two of us, right?
Nope, not at all.
Can make it a bit more complex and more people that you add, but it can also be good. That sounds great.
Well, the happy calls were designed that way, right? So 150 whatever now. You know, we're designed around happy. It only lasted 7 days. That's all we needed.
Mm.
And then we were complete. So it's only a week you need for happy, but happy is what we want, but is why we can't have it.
And but is why we can't have it. That's what I was going to say. So what about doing happy but, comma, dot, 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 and then and in capital letters?
I think
I'll
that
then
is,
think about that.
yeah, think about it, because that is the turn rather than saying the but. We want to say and, happy and. Or happy or yes and is really the key, replacing but with yes and.
Yeah, but the but is still there.
What do you mean?
So it's like a negative and positive. The negative is always there, and it's good that it's there, because that gives us our stepping stone. Right? So but is the stepping stone to yes and.
Mm-hmm. Starting position. Mm-hmm. The awareness, starting position of awareness. That's the easiest thing to remember or notice is your no's and your buts, your ors, and replace them with and is a huge. That is happy.
Yes.
And Chat GPT did put 8 chapters together for us.
Shit.
Eight chapter titles. And it doesn't mean that we have to accept them, but it's a framework.
No, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, I didn't even think about using it. What I mean, it could make a huge difference, right?
Well, one, when you experience it and have the tools that you've experienced and brought in and bring it into the framework. Yes. And what's next? Chapter 2.
Exactly.
Well, here, let me, I wrote it here. Let's see what it says. We can't blindly accept it. That's the downfall to it. But if you use it as a structure.
Yeah, it's not a downfall. I think it's a huge addition.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful because it gives you things to work off from.
So the first one. All right. So write a book titled Happy But. Number 1 was the elusive pursuit of happiness. 2, the paradox of happiness. 3, the mask we wear. The pursuit of fulfillment. Embracing the but. Redefining happiness. Finding balance. And cultivating gratitude.
Cultivating gravity.
Gratitude.
Oh, gratitude. Okay, sorry. My phone meant I had to run to plug it in again. So those are the chapters.
Yeah, that's what it broke out, the chapters, and then gave definitions inside of it, like gave a high level aim at it, a mission for them. Yeah.
Okay. It's not bad. It's darn good, actually.
Right. Good. And then I did one happy, but I can't. And I like this one because it says the struggle of unattainable happiness. breaking free from expectations, dealing with mental health challenges, overcoming life's obstacles, exploring internal barriers, finding joy in small moments, embracing imperfections and authenticity.
Yeah, wonderful.
And chapter 8 is creating a meaningful life.
Those are really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what I like about, like I said, about using ChatGPT is that I've got something, I've got a template, and then I go in and it's a stimulus for me. It's not as hard as going into completely open space for me.
That's what I found too. That's the best way to use it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, old patterns are still entrenched in it by granting it the authority. And it's like, no, it's just giving framework that, oh, we can create inside of the framework.
Exactly.
So I'll put it in a Google document and share it with you. Both of them. I'll send you all of them that I put in there, and then we can play around with some more and keep adding to it.
Yeah.
To the Google Doc and
Thanks.
See what we can come up with in it. I don't know.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Jace.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. Okay. I don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, me neither. All right.
That would be so nice. Okay.
Anything good?
Wonderful.
Anything else?
Yeah, no. Good for the day.
Good. And then we can actually,
much.
What we'll do is we'll make these sessions about that. Maybe that's a frame that we'll think about now, is like those sessions that we do is like, oh, maybe that's what we put our attention onto now. Yeah. Because I've been, that could be something there. And then Friday still stay go. But since it's just us, those that show up for this can be part of that, which is you and Ginny. And I'm open for anyone else, right? But those that want to commit to this is the project that we could do that too.
Okay.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Within 4 weeks, we'll have one.
Okay. Okay, great. I love it.
All right. Well, have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
Thanks.